The first 3 months of the new fiscal have seen kitchen costs surging, and they have gone up mainly on account of the rise in vegetable prices. And as though tomatoes were not enough, the prices of other vegetables have also been skyrocketing. So an average urban individual living in a metro may be shelling out at least 85% more because of these rising vegetable prices, and 85% is significantly high. It's caused by low supplies and restricted availability. So with the southwest monsoon now continuing to inundate fields and farms in major growing centers, the situation may not change in a hurry, and vegetables may continue to cause some amount of heartburn in the weeks to come. So how are common households expected to deal with this additional burden? Will there be some relief, or the supply constraints, are they going to continue or not? My colleague Aishwarya has given us this report. Take a look.
Well, first, the heat wave was something that led to the crop damage across many regions in the country. And that's where the upsurge in terms of tomato prices began. Now, it's the flash floods and flooding in agricultural regions across the country that has led to a worsening of the condition in terms of vegetable prices. We've seen an upsurge across the board. Most vegetables are seeing an upsurge of 50% and more. Brinjal, chilies, tomatoes, and at least in Mumbai, in the Dadar market at this point, we have seen no relief. All the tomato prices and tomato vendors are actually saying it's more than 100 rupees at this point. And supply disruption is what they're claiming. आपको टमाटो प्राइसेस में क्या प्रॉब्लम दिखाई दे रही थी? मतलब होलसेल में आपको काफी महंगा मिल रहा है, सप्लाई में कुछ इशू है, क्यों ऐसे इतना बढ़ता हुआ नजर आ रहा है?
अरे उधर से ही महंगा आता है, वो शेतकरी भी उतना नहीं कमाता बेचारा, ये लोग बीच में लेके आते, वो लोग ही महंगा कर देते। तो इधर हम लोग को 4000 5000 का 30 किलो 28 किलो माल मिलता है, तो वही भाव हम लोग खाली हम लोग का 2 रुपए पर धंधा है, बस उसके ऊपर नहीं है।
पहले कितना बड़ा क्रेट बेचते थे, अभी क्या कस्टमर्स
ना 200 रुपए 300 रुपए कैरेट था, आज वही कैरेट 5000 का है, बस इतना ही।
तो कस्टमर्स पहले ज्यादा टमाटर खरीदते थे, आपका दिन में कितना किलो बिकता था और अभी कितना किलो बिक रहा है?
पहला अच्छा बिकता था टमाटर, अभी 1-2 जाली।
Obviously, the economics of households have gone for a toss because of these price pressures. What an average household would spend on vegetables has gone up manifold. Let's discuss how this is going to play out in the economy as we move along. And Jayant Dasgupta is joining us as part of this discussion. Former ambassador, of course, and representative of India at the World Trade Organization. And he's joined by Avik Saha, the national president at the Jaikisan Andolan. Great to have you both, gentlemen. Jayant Dasgupta, tell us, how different do you think this inflation scenario is, the kind that we are seeing now, and the kind of impact it's having on household budgets? How different is it this time compared to the past? Do you see a trend emerging in terms of what happens during the monsoon time with the inflationary pressure setting in?
Well, if you look at vegetable price inflation specifically, you'll find that it has been going up. Inflation has been there for the past many years and as a persistent feature. But this year, it has been aggravated because of the heat wave and then subsequent very erratic monsoon and flooding of the areas. One point I would like to mention is that our overall vegetable production has been going up. And according to Statista, if we take the figures, in 2020, we produced about 188 million metric tons of vegetables, including all kinds of vegetables. In 2021, it was 200 million tons. In 22, it was 209. And this year, of course, one has to factor in the erratic monsoon, but it was projected at 212 million metric tons. The point that I wanted to make is that there are a few factors which give a push to inflation. One is that there is a demand-supply gap, definitely. the production levels which we require to feed our population with its growing requirements of fruits, protein, and vegetables is not being met adequately. So there is a demand supply gap which is leading to inflationary pressure. The other point is that wage cost, which accounts for a large part of the cost of production, has also been going up quite steadily over the years. So this is leading to a persistent pressure on the prices of vegetables specifically, but also cereals. And for cereals, of course, there is another reason. The MSP plays an important role in pushing up prices of cereals. But once the cereal prices go up, there is a knock-on effect on vegetables because the two are interrelated.
Sure.
The last point I wanted to mention is that there has been some study which shows that there is a correlation between temperature rise and inflation also.
Right. So all these factors are well taken. Avik Saha, you tell us, this time around, how difficult has it been for farmers to produce the kind of produce that they have in the past? How difficult has that been? Is it a production problem? Is it a supply problem? Where is the bottleneck? Avik Saha, that was for you.
I'm not going to tell you anything. I'll just lead you to Commodity Online. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Please go. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you to commodityonline.com and today's quotations. All over the country, for a few of the popular vegetables, I'm keeping tomato aside for a moment because that's very volatile. But brinjals, beans, gourd, the mandi price is anything between 8 rupees a kg to 30 rupees a kg. Now, you and I know, sitting in the city, that we are not buying our vegetables at this price or at a multiplier of this price, including the storage, transportation, and the profit of the link chain. So what's happening is, this is not about labor. This is not about production. This is about a failure of supply chain and a consistent neglect to build up the supply chain. Now, farmers have for long been saying that we are not getting prices, but there's no one to listen to them. I'm very happy that vegetable prices have gone to this level. So at last, the consuming class, the middle class, the city dwellers, will also perhaps, hopefully, join the farmers in demanding to know why the mandi price is 1/4 or 1/5 of the retail price, and where is it all going? The supply chain has failed simply because there is no investment from the government in building up this supply chain. And unless the government invests in the supply chain, it will not work. It's not enough for the government to say that the private sector players will come in and build up the supply chain. Exactly why the vegetable prices have gone up today is because of the private sector players. So if you look at the budgetary allocations for agriculture as a whole, from 2011 at 5.4%, 5.4, in 2021 it has become 4.3. Now, if you are going to invest less and less in the agri sector and building up the supply chain, you are going to see these prices. Of course, there'll be inclement weather, there'll be climate change, all of that aggravates it.
Yes. Jayant,
fundamentally, you are not investing.
The supply issue has not been there in the past. Jayant Dasgupta, do weigh in on this. Do you think the government is working enough, doing enough to stabilize these prices? Because a lot can be done. You can ensure that you have a better supply chain. There could be a better release of stocks as required. There could be restrictions on hoarding. Is all of this happening? It's a valid question why there is so much of a divergence between the mandi price and the retail price, like Avik Saha is pointing out.
Well, if we take the case of vegetables, most of them are perishable items, and they are apart from onions to a certain extent, and of course potatoes, which are stored in cold storages, the others all have a limited shelf life, and they have to come from the farm to the market within a few weeks or days. So there is this issue of supply chain management, which Mr. Saha has pointed out. That is a very, very important point. But we also have to take into account the fact that most of our vegetable producers are not large entities, not large farmers. They produce in small quantities, and then that is consolidated, that goes to the nearest mandi, and then onto the wholesale chain, and it goes to the cities to get sold. So supply chain management is something which the government has been trying to get into, but for vegetables, it is not all that easy to manage, especially when it is a perishable item. And unlike potatoes, which can be stored in cold storages, or onions, which have a much longer shelf life, most of the other vegetables, it's very, very difficult to manage that through the government agencies.
Ask Avik Saha, do you think the problem will persist? Because the supply constraints, we have been grappling with them for a while and they haven't been addressed. So until that goes, do we see much more of the rainfall having that kind of impact on the prices? Because we tend to do that when it comes to the monsoons. We talk about the spatial distribution of rainfall. We talk about erratic monsoons, and that could have an impact even on kharif sowing, and the possibility that that could aggravate the food inflation scenario. Does that possibility still continue to linger for our economy, Avik Saha?
Yes, it does, but that's more related to the cereal crops. Vegetables, there are two particular features about vegetable farming that you
But aren't the two going to be linked?
Typically, they are grown.
Are you okay with...
No, they are not going to be linked.
The kind of price
No,
inflation...
I mean, if you talk...
Yes, go ahead.
No, we have to separate the cereal crops from the vegetables. Vegetables are grown by small marginal farmers, typically within 80 kilometers of a consumption center. So it is not so much of the supply chain problem, because in 2018 budget, we heard about 20,000 village hearts infrastructure being set up. So you see, the policy exists. I would say even the political will exists, but implementation is so poor that a farmer who is plucking in the morning must sell by afternoon, otherwise it will perish. Now, if there is a cold chain within the village, and now solar powered cold chains are available, then there is no pressure on the farmer to sell, and he can get a price that is commensurate with the effort and the investment he has made. Now, if this cold chain, the village heart to the consuming center is set up, it will be absolutely reasonable to expect that both the farmer and the consumer will get the price. If infrastructure is so difficult, and it is, as Mr. Dasgupta pointed out, how is it that some people are bettering this and laughing all the way to the bank? Despite all these constraints, there is someone who's selling tomatoes at 300 rupees a kilo. So you see, we have left the market to hoarders and black marketeers and fly-by-night operators. The government needs to step in,
yes,
both for the farmer and for the consumer, and there's no escape from this.
Jayant Dasgupta, would you agree?
However,
because the RBI now, in the kind of pause that we've taken at the moment, when food inflation continues to have that kind of bearing on the kind of macro picture that emerges, are we likely to see that kind of change reflect in our interest rates again?
RBI will take a call on this on the 10th of August. According to the projections that have been made, in May 2023, food inflation was at its lowest in many, many years. But in June, it has shown an increasing upward trend. And in July, perhaps it is likely to reach about 6% levels. So the RBI, I think, will not relax on its tight monetary policy front. This, by 15th of August or so, there are projections that the vegetable price inflation at least will ease a little bit, because fresh crops of many vegetables will come to the market, which are produced in larger quantities. But then in September, we have this onion crop coming from Nasik and Maharashtra. And that will again have its own story to tell, because there are rains which are taking place in Maharashtra and in northern Karnataka. So we have an uncertainty which is linked to excessive rainfall and loss of production of many key vegetables. Onion, potatoes, and tomatoes are the three which drive a lot of the inflation in vegetables. Potatoes, of course, is stable because it is stored in large quantities, but onions and tomatoes will still have an issue.
Yes.
And of course, as Mr. Saha has pointed out, brinjals, cauliflowers, for instance, gourd, many beans, many other vegetables are also showing an upward trend in
There
prices.
is a certain upside risk to food inflation, and that is something that we can expect will stay over the coming months. The seasonality in these vegetable prices, you mentioned tomatoes and onions. And of course, this kind of imbalance that we are seeing in the demand-supply situation, that not easing is not going to take the pressure off the kind of prices we are seeing on some vegetables. How much of an impact that has as far as the RBI's decision now is concerned on interest rates is going to be watched very closely. But for the moment, it's definitely pinching pockets. Household budgets are going for a toss. Avik Saha and Jayant Dasgupta, many thanks for joining us with your perspective on India Development Debate.